Does the 4-day work week sound like a total fantasy? Well, in today's episode, we are going to be diving in to find out whether this is something that's actually achievable or whether it really is a fantasy. Now, I've been experimenting with this for a few months, and I am here to share with you what is really happening when I tried the 4-day work week. Welcome to the Do More, Stress Less podcast. I'm your host, Alexis Hasselberger, a time management and productivity coach. In every episode, I give you actionable, practical tips to help you learn to use your time in a way that feels good to you every day. No more hustling, scrambling, or struggling to keep your head above water. So let's dive in, and soon enough, you'll be doing more and stressing less. The 4-day work week. Is this an impossible dream or an achievable reality? Now, I have been trying something new this year. I have jumped on the 4-day work week bandwagon, but I haven't decided if I'm going to do it forever. I'm experimenting in 2024 to see if I can make this work for my company and myself long term. And this is how I approach most things, actually, through experimentation and iteration. Now, if it doesn't work out, that's okay. I kind of happen to like my life right now anyway, so really it will be okay if it doesn't work. But I suspect that a 4-day work week might improve my life without actually affecting my livelihood. And that's key. So that's what I'm testing. Now, studies show that productivity does not drop when switching to a 4-day work week, even when you're working fewer hours overall. And in fact, studies show that productivity generally increases when people switch to a 4-day work week. Now, I suspect this is due in part to Parkinson's law, that work expands to fill the time allotted. So if you have less time to allot, you'll get the work done more efficiently. This finding could also be related to the study that showed us that working more than 50 hours a week leads to diminishing returns on productivity. So when we work more, we are not actually more productive. There are diminishing returns after a certain number of hours. Now, I also have some personal experience that leads me to believe that this situation could work for me. So when I returned to work after my very first maternity leave many, many years ago, I could no longer simply work later if I had more work to do because I had to pick up my kid at daycare and they charge $1 a minute if you're late. And I remember immediately becoming more efficient, getting everything done that I needed to get done before 5 p.m. every day because there was no other option. And let's be honest, working in the evenings or weekends has never really been an option that I am willing to consider. And this 4-day workweek experiment, it's not a far cry from other experiments I've already done with my schedule. In fact, every quarter, I look back at my schedule and I ask myself what worked so that I can double down on it and what didn't so that I can experiment with something else. It's just that this 4-day workweek experiment might just be the biggest experiment I have ever done with my schedule to date. And here's the thing, I am not just willy-nilly picking a day to not work and hoping for the best. That's not how we're going to do this. I'm putting thought and preparation into this experiment. So what does this actually look like? Well, first, let's start with my pre-2024 schedule, or rather its last iteration. Now, in 2023, I was generally working Monday through Friday, starting around 9 a.m. and ending sometime between about 3:30, and 5 p.m., sometimes later, but I was trying to end on the earlier side. Mondays were my no meeting day, and that's been like that for years. It's when I get almost all my creative work done with no interruption. Now, Tuesdays through Thursdays, these were devoted to clients and admin work. And Fridays were connecting with colleagues and for learning, professional development. But if I'm being honest, they also contained quite a bit of admin as well. Now, if I look at that schedule, and I did, I couldn't quite figure out how to just remove a day and still fit everything that I needed to do into the remaining 4 days. I will say I am already a pretty efficient person because I have honed these skills over the years. So I was looking at this and I couldn't quite figure out how to do it. So here's what I'm trying this iteration. Here's what I'm trying in 2024. So the first thing is I am not messing with Mondays. Mondays for me are sacred and I need that time for creative work. I'm also going to try to push my learning and personal development, professional development stuff into Mondays. Now, how am I going to do this? Well, I have been finding that lately I write the first drafts of my blog posts on airplanes. So this was something that I used to do just every Monday morning, but now I find that I batch process them whenever I'm on an airplane. And in fact, the blog post that inspired this podcast, it was written on an airplane where I had already drafted about 8 blog posts already in just one sitting. So that's been really helping me with efficiency. I edit on Mondays. And this cuts down on the time that I need on Mondays to edit and publish because I'm not writing from scratch. So I'm not going to mess too much with Mondays, but I am going to shove a little personal development in there. Now, Tuesdays through Thursdays, these are going to remain devoted to client work and admins, but I am expecting to work a couple of more hours on these days. And in fact, I have been. I've been at this for about 8 weeks now, and I have been, finishing around 5:30, sometimes 6 or 6:30, depending, right? I am also going to be trying to block off a whole day every other week so that I can get focused project work done. So I'm going to block off a Wednesday every other week, and I'm going to plan for that day to be kind of like an extra Monday where I just do creative work, no interruptions. And then I'm taking Fridays off. So I do have a few regularly scheduled connection-related meetings on Fridays with colleagues, but I don't actually consider these work, and I never have. So I'm okay with leaving those on Fridays. They energize me, they feel good, and they're not obligatory. Like, these are things I'm choosing to do. Or rather, I think I'm fine with that. I don't actually know. Time will tell as this experiment continues whether I want to remove these things from Fridays and put them on other days, or whether this still works for me. Now, I'm also trying to use Fridays. It's not just like a free day to do whatever I want. I'm also trying to push any of my personal appointments, my doctor's appointments, et cetera, into Fridays. In the past, I've just scheduled these on kind of whatever day I could fit them in between client sessions, but I'm really trying to focus these on Fridays so that Monday through Thursday can be really focused work days. Now, how's it going so far? So as I mentioned, I'm about 2 months into this experiment. And while it's going pretty well, it hasn't been without incident. Now, I'm still calibrating my workload to my new work week. And some weeks, I have to admit, I've put a little more on my plate than I can handle, overestimating what I can do. And it's been humbling. This is something that I work with all of my clients on. But week by week, as I learn to recalibrate, as I use the skills that I teach everyone else, to teach all of my clients, and I use the skills that have worked well for me in my life in the past and currently, I am getting back to a steady state of task realism. And task realism is where you make sure that you're not assigning yourself anything more than you actually have time to do, right? And so I'm getting back to that. But it's been a learning curve. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that I've also made a couple of exceptions already. So we're only 2 months into the year, and I've made 2 exceptions. I booked a couple of client meetings on a Friday, only when that was literally the only day that the client could make it. And I wanted to avoid having to push things several weeks into the future. Sticking to your boundaries is hard, even when your boundaries are clearly defined and they're backed up with science. And I am not immune to that. And here's what I promise going forward. So near the end of the year, I am going to let you know how this experiment worked out. I'm going to let you know whether I'm going to continue it in 2025. I'm going to share what I've learned, what I've noticed, what I've observed, what I've changed, so that you might be able to apply some of this to your work for yourself, or be better prepared to suggest it at your workplace. Now, I also want to know, if you work a 4-day work week already, if you've made this transition, tell me your secrets. What did you do? What worked? What didn't? I want to learn from you. How long have you been doing it? And what have you learned along the way? So share that with me, because I would absolutely love to learn from you. And also follow along here, because I'm going to be giving you perhaps some periodic updates, but definitely an update at the end of the year around whether this experiment worked and if I'm going to be doing it going forward. And if so, what changes might I make?
And that's a wrap on today's episode of the Do More, Stress Less podcast. If you found today's episode helpful, please share it with somebody who could use a little less stress in their life. And make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're excited to take action, or you need a little extra support, check out the free resources available on my website, or schedule a free consultation call with me. You can do both of these at alexishasselberger.com. See you next time.